I paid over $5,000 for my sister's engagement party, and in return, they told me I wasn't close enough to be in the family photo. My name is Lucas Harper. I'm 36 years old, a civil engineer living in Seattle. I'm not the kind of guy who stirs up drama in the family. I'm the dependable one. The one who replies in the family group chat, remembers everyone's birthdays, quietly sends money when my parents need to fix the roof. The one everyone assumes will just handle things. I'm not the favorite child. I'm not the sibling they brag about at work. Oh, Lucas will probably help. And honestly, I didn't mind. At least, I thought I didn't. Not until everything came crashing down. At a party I paid for, where I ended up sitting next to the restaurant's trash bin. That night, my entire family, my parents, my sister, the extended relatives, were laughing, toasting, taking pictures, ordering top-shelf drinks, all on my tab. And there I was, new suit, carefully chosen gift I'd been planning for a week, sitting quietly, completely invisible. It wasn't the seat that hurt me. It was how normal it felt to them, like I belonged by the trash. So when the bill came, over $5,000, I stood up for the first time in years, and I said loud and clear, I don't belong at that table, and I'm not paying for a party I was never really invited to. Nobody saw that coming. But in that moment, I stopped being the family's background character. And what happened after was more than I ever could have imagined. My name is Lucas Harper. I was born and raised in a small town in Vermont, where winters come heavy with snow and summers barely stretch past 2.5 months. My family? Pretty much your textbook middle-class American household. Dad was a high school math teacher. Mom worked as a librarian at the town library. And my little sister, Ashley, was the golden child. I'm the eldest, but not the stereotypical strict, bossy big brother. I was quiet. The type who knew how to wait in line, washed the dishes without being told, never complained when my birthday slipped their minds. I never thought I was special. I just thought I needed to be okay. And I was. I really was. Ashley was the opposite. Smart, bubbly, witty. She had this way of pulling everyone's attention even when she didn't say a word. My parents adored her. They didn't try to play favorites, but emotions aren't always distributed evenly. And in our house, the scale tilted heavily in her favor. I remember the first time I realized I was the one standing off to the side. It was middle school. Ashley got picked to star in the school musical. The whole family showed up with flowers, took photos, posted long captions on Facebook like it was opening night on Broadway. And when I placed second in the statewide math competition, all I got was, "Good job, honey. I'll make your favorite meatballs tonight." I wasn't mad, but I remembered. College? I applied on my own, hunted down scholarships, worked the morning shift at a bakery for 4 straight years. Ashley, she got campus tours, helped picking out dorms, even her own car, so it'd be easier to get to class. Still, no resentment. I told myself, you're the older brother. You've got this. After graduation, I landed a steady job as a structural engineer in Seattle. Good income, decent life. No wife, no kids, no drama, no trouble. And because of that, I became forgettable. In my family's eyes, I was the one who understood, the one they didn't have to worry about, the one who was tough enough to handle things. But what they never realized is, sometimes the quiet ones are the ones carrying the heaviest things, the words they never say. I never blamed them for loving Ashley. She deserved it, but I guess a small part of me always hoped that, just once, they'd look across the dinner table, see me sitting there, and think, he matters too. Not because I was brilliant, but because I'd always been there, every time they needed me. And I truly believed, maybe for the first time, that Ashley's engagement party would be my moment. The moment I'd finally feel like I belonged in a shared memory. But as you already know, that's not how it turned out. Maybe the reason I stayed quiet all these years wasn't because I was weak, but because I believed that kindness eventually gets returned. I thought, if I just did the right thing, if I just kept giving, if I just kept showing up whenever they needed me, then one day someone would turn around and say, thank you. I started working at 23. Back then, my parents were drowning in medical debt from Dad's knee surgery. Nobody asked me to help, but I knew things were tight, so with my very first paycheck, I sent a small amount home. No one mentioned it. There was no thank you text. Just the next time I visited, Mom made apple pie, and I thought, that's enough. Then came the year Ashley lost her job. She'd just been laid off from an ad agency during a round of budget cuts. I wired her a few $1,000s. Just think of it as a loan, I said. Enough to get her through a few months and help her move to New York. Mom said, thank you, honey, but don't tell your dad. He's already stressed enough. It was never brought up again. That money never repaid. The year after, I postponed my summer vacation because Mom was hospitalized with high blood pressure. I canceled a Utah hiking trip with friends, drove across the state to the hospital, and sat by her bedside for 3 straight days. When I called to check in after she was discharged, she just said, I'm feeling better. Don't mention anything to Ashley. She's got that new project going on. I got used to it. The background role, the stable older brother, the one who steps back so others can step forward. I never asked to be remembered. But sometimes, late at night, when the apartment is dead quiet, I find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering, if I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone really notice? I think I became comfortable being invisible. I learned to live like a silent pillar, strong, needed, but unseen. Until that engagement party, I thought, maybe this would be a small chance to be included in the frame. Not just literally, but emotionally, a quiet confirmation that I was part of the family. Not just by blood, but by presence, by recognition. But I was wrong, so wrong. I remember the day my mom called me, vividly. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was on site at a construction project just outside Seattle. The rain was falling in a slow, chilly drizzle. Steel beams were slick, the ground muddy, and I was double-checking the foundation specs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. When I saw Mom flashing on the screen, I knew this wasn't going to be a casual check-in. I stepped into a quiet corner, wiped off the screen, and answered. Her voice came through soft and sweet, with that familiar trace of hesitation. Lucas, honey, "Are you busy?" I told her no, even though I was. That's how she always starts. Gentle tone, a hint of asking for a favor, but never quite saying it outright. And this time was no different. "Ashley, she's getting engaged. His name's James. He's a sweet guy, and his family's very nice." I smiled into the phone and said congratulations. Told her I was really happy for them. There was a brief pause. Then came that voice again. The voice of someone carefully dancing around something they know isn't quite fair. "Your dad and I were thinking of throwing a little engagement party in New York, a nice evening rooftop event overlooking the city. You know Ashley, she loves that kind of thing." I kept listening. "I've looked at a few places. Not cheap, Lucas, but it'll be worth it. Just one really special night." Then her voice dropped slightly. "I know you're busy, but if you could maybe help with the reservation, call the restaurant, put down a deposit, cover a bit of the initial cost, we'll pay you back later. Put down a deposit, a bit of the initial cost. We'll pay you back later." I'd heard those phrases all my life, and I knew exactly what they really meant. I'd be the one paying, and no one would ever mention it again. I opened my calendar, drew a line through a vacation I'd been planning since last month, and said, "Sure, Mom, just send me the details." That same evening, I spent 3 hours online researching venues. I found a rooftop in Manhattan, warm amber lighting, a live acoustic band, a 3-course prix-fixe menu, and private service for 20 guests. Estimated cost, over $5,000. I wired $1,000 for the deposit that night. I didn't mind the money. Truly. In fact, I told myself, maybe this time I'm doing something that won't go unseen. Maybe this time I'll be remembered. I had invitations printed, picked out floral arrangements in Ashley's favorite color scheme, even offered to have a large photo frame made with their names engraved. I pictured the evening in my head. The golden lights, the laughter, the music. And, for the first time in my life, I imagined being part of a celebration I helped create. That's what I thought. I arrived right on time. 7 p.m., just like the invitation said. Navy suit pressed the night before. Gray tie, the same one I wore to my first job interview almost 10 years ago. In one hand, a vintage bottle of champagne, not extravagant, but thoughtful. In the other, an envelope with a silver-inked card that read, "Ashley and James." On the way to the restaurant, I felt nervous, not anxious exactly, more like that strange feeling you get when you step into something you've been kept out of for too long. I wasn't expecting a round of applause, not even a loud "thank you." All I hoped for, just this once, was to be in the frame. The restaurant was on the 18th floor, with a rooftop that stretched out toward the Manhattan skyline. The sun had just dipped below the buildings, and the city lights were beginning to glow. There was soft jazz in the background, played by the band I'd hired, a long white tablecloth dining setup, pastel roses on every seat. I walked in, and the hostess gave me a polite nod. "Harper party? Right this way, sir." I followed her past the main area. Laughter echoed. Glasses clinked. Conversations buzzed. I spotted Ashley, radiant in a pearl-toned dress, laughing beside James. My parents stood nearby, shaking hands with the future in-laws. Everyone was there. I smiled, walked over, and held out the champagne and the card. Ashley turned to me, her eyes glancing at the bottle for a second before she smiled. "Oh, you made it. Great. Your seat's over there." I blinked. She pointed toward the far end of the terrace. A single folding chair placed next to the service station. No flowers, no name card, no one else nearby. "The main table's full. Hope you don't mind just sitting there for now." I thought she was joking. I looked at Mom, hoping for some kind of reaction, a sympathetic look, a small intervention, but she just smiled, faintly. That same smile I'd seen all through childhood whenever I was quietly pushed aside. I walked to the chair. No one came with me. No one said, "Here, take my seat." Not one person invited me to sit beside them. I set the bottle on the ground and sat down. The chair was hard and wobbly. I sat there, suit crisp, tie perfectly in place. Watching the party I had placed the deposit for, I wasn't angry, not right away. I just felt nothing, empty. A server approached and asked if I'd like something to drink. "Just water, thanks." He hesitated for a second, then walked away quietly. I sat there for nearly 2 hours. No one asked if I was hungry. No one asked if I wanted to take a photo. I slipped right back into the role I knew so well. Present, but not really there. And that's when it hit me. My silence over the years. They had taken it as agreement. But that night, for the first time in a long time, I started to disagree. I can't pinpoint the exact moment I decided to stand up. It was just that the longer I sat there, the more it felt like I was trapped inside a glass box. Everyone else moving, laughing, clinking glasses. And me, frozen in a scene I didn't belong to. When it was time for speeches, James stood up to applause, held Ashley's hand, and started thanking the most wonderful people who made the night possible. I heard my parents' names. I heard cheerful laughter from his family. I heard thanks to the band, to the venue. I heard everything except one thing. No one mentioned me. I didn't need honor. I didn't need recognition. But even a simple thanks to my brother for helping book the venue. Apparently, that was too much. When the cake came out, 3 tiers, white frosting, gold accents, and fresh flowers. Exactly the design I'd picked out. Everyone pulled out their phones for pictures. And me? I just sat there, hands clenched under the table. And then the server came back. He was holding a small leather folder. The kind fancy restaurants used to present the check. He walked to the main table, looked around, then cleared his throat. "Excuse me. The total for the event comes to $5,187. Unless there's another card, we'll be charging the one used for the deposit." Silence. All eyes turned to me. James looked around, confused. Dad sipped his drink. Mom looked away. Ashley gave a tight smile and said, almost like she was joking, "Lucas paid already, right? He always handles this stuff." I stood up, slowly, no rush, no anger, just stood up, brushed off my suit, turned to the server. "Yes, I put down the deposit, but I don't belong at that table." My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone to hear. I turned to Ashley. You said this table was for family, so the guy's shoved next to the trash bin on a folding chair. Probably shouldn't be the one footing the bill for your family dinner. No one said a word. Dad stiffened. Mom opened her mouth like she was going to speak, but didn't. James stared at me, wide-eyed. The air grew thick. Even the band missed a beat. The server looked at me, waiting for confirmation. I gave a small nod. I won't be covering the rest. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I wasn't welcomed. I'm not paying. Then I grabbed my coat, draped it over my shoulder, and walked slowly toward the elevator. No one stopped me. No one called my name. Just dozens of stunned faces, frozen, like they couldn't quite believe what had just happened. But me, for the first time, I felt like I'd stepped out of a role I never agreed to play. I left the restaurant by the stairs, not because I was afraid someone would call me back, but because I knew no one would. Each step felt like marking another year of swallowed silence, another quiet sacrifice I'd convinced myself was just what I was supposed to do, another moment spent on the sidelines, pretending I was fine. When I stepped out into the hotel lobby, the New York night hit me like a cold breeze. I pulled my coat tighter around me. But inside, I wasn't cold anymore. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked, away from that place, away from the stairs, from the folding chair by the trash, from the thank yous that were never said. I got back to my hotel close to midnight, dropped my coat over a chair, took off my watch, washed my face, never even turned on the lights. I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep, but I passed out the second my head hit the pillow. A deep, dreamless sleep, like my body finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop. 3 missed calls from Mom, 1 message from Ashley, and, oddest of all, a number I didn't recognize with a New York area code. I wasn't going to call back, but then I did. The voice on the other end picked up after 1 ring. "Lucas? It's James." I paused, not because I was shocked, but because I didn't know if I was ready to hear whatever was coming. "I hope I'm not bothering you," he continued, "but I need to ask you something." I sat up, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm listening." He exhaled. "Is it true? You booked the venue? You paid for the flowers? The band? All of it?" I nodded, then remembered. He couldn't see me. "Yeah, it's true. I didn't volunteer. They asked. I said yes. Didn't think I'd end up invisible." There was a pause. "Last night, they told me you offered to do everything, that you wanted to, that you chose to sit alone because you're shy." I let out a small laugh. Not amused, just empty, that brittle sound you make when there's nothing left to protect. "Do you believe that?" James was honest. "I wanted to. But this morning I called the restaurant. I asked about the bill. I asked who made the reservation, and now I'm not sure I know who I'm marrying." I said nothing. Then he added with a heavy breath, "I don't know where this is going from here. But I do know one thing. No one should be treated like that. Especially not the only person who made the night possible." And the call ended with 1 simple sentence. "Thank you, truly." I set my phone down on the nightstand, stared out the window. The city was still buzzing, still cold, still indifferent, but me? For once I'd been heard. By the one person I never expected. After the call with James, I knew this wasn't going to stay just a small family matter. And I was right. Within hours, my phone started buzzing non-stop. Messages, calls, notifications from the family group chat. A chat that hadn't seen real activity in years, unless it was someone's birthday or Thanksgiving. The first message came from Mom. "Lucas, about last night. Maybe you overreacted a little. I know you didn't mean to cause a scene. Can you call me?" The second was from Ashley. Short, sharp, and anything but soft. "Do you even realize what you just did? I can't believe you embarrassed me like that. In front of James's friends, his business partners, his whole family. You ruined everything." Then, a text from Dad, who almost never messages me directly. "We need to talk. A man doesn't act like that in front of guests. You know that." I set my phone down on the kitchen counter. Didn't respond. Didn't open anything else. I didn't feel angry, just hollow. The kind of hollow that comes when you think you've finally touched something real. A moment where maybe, just maybe, you'd be seen. Only to realize it was the same old loop. They don't see what's broken. They only see that I disturbed their peace. That afternoon I got an email. Subject line, just one word, "Please." Sender, my mother. It was 5 paragraphs long, full of phrases like, "I didn't know you felt that way. This could have been explained," and "Family is about forgiveness." But not once. Not a single time did the word Ori appear, not even close. Just the usual soft deflection, that I misunderstood, that I was too sensitive, that everyone's been under stress lately. Every excuse, every sidestep, just to avoid the core truth. I was treated like I didn't exist. And that isn't normal. I left the email unread in my inbox. That night, I walked the neighborhood, cold wind slicing across my face. But inside, I felt calm, strangely calm. I didn't want to call back. I didn't feel the urge to be the fixer. I wasn't scared of being misunderstood anymore. Everything was too clear to need explaining. The next day I got a call I never expected. My aunt, Mom's older sister, the one who'd always stayed out of the family drama. Her voice was raspy with age but steady. "Lucas," she said, "I heard what happened." I stayed quiet. "I'm not calling to scold you. I'm calling to say, finally. Someone had the guts to break the cycle." I didn't respond. I wasn't sure I'd heard her right. She continued, "Your mother spent her whole life trying to keep the family looking perfect, but at what cost? By covering things up, by letting one child carry everything in silence. You didn't do anything wrong, Lucas. You just stopped being the background." I thanked her. Truly, for the first time in my life, someone in the family had stood by me. Not out of pity, but because they actually saw me. And in that moment, I knew. The wind had finally changed direction. The news that James had called off the wedding didn't come from Ashley. It didn't come from my parents either. It came from someone I barely expected to remember me after the party. Trent, one of James's close friends. We'd spoken a few times at family gatherings, nothing more. He called one morning while I was making coffee, getting ready to return to work after a week off. "Lucas," he said, "I don't mean to intrude, but you should probably know. James just told the wedding planner he's canceling everything, not postponing, canceling." I frowned. "Because of the party?" Trent exhaled, his voice unsure. "Partly, but not just that. After that night, James started asking questions. He told me, if they could treat you like that, someone they've known their whole lives, what would they be capable of once he became part of that family?" I didn't know what to say. "I think he's finally seeing what he used to gloss over," Trent added, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't about me anymore. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a dramatic moment in the middle of a party. This was a chain reaction, something that had been cracked for years, was finally breaking open. All because I dared to stop, enduring. The next day, I got a message from Ashley. Not long, not angry like before. Just one line. "What did you say to James?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. James had seen, and more importantly, I no longer owed anyone an explanation. I logged into a bank account, a temporary joint account I once set up for Ashley when she was between jobs. She still had services running on it, a music subscription, gym membership, a few auto renewals. I'd once said, "Just leave them, don't worry, we'll figure it out later." I transferred the remaining balance into my own account. Not much, but it was the last thing I'd kept for family. Then I closed the account, permanently. An hour later, my phone rang. Ashley. I didn't pick up. A message popped up. My card was declined. Did something happen with the account? I typed 4 words. "Account's been closed." A minute later, "Are you punishing me?" I didn't respond, and I thought, no, I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done paying for a role I never agreed to play. I'd spent too long behind the curtain, setting the stage, holding up the beams, lifting the props, so others could step forward and shine without ever stumbling. And not once was I invited to stand under the lights with them. But now I knew my role was over. I no longer expected anything from anyone. No apology, no remorseful phone call, no explanations. So when I saw an email from Brooke, James's ex-fiancée, I almost thought it was sent by mistake. The subject line was simple. "We need to talk." I opened it close to midnight, after a long day at work and a full evening of ignoring my phone. Outside, a light rain was falling, the perfect backdrop for a quiet conversation with no voices. The email was longer than I expected. No flowery words, no justifications, just someone being honest. "Lucas, I wasn't sure whether to write this, but after everything that's happened, I felt I needed to. Not to explain, not to fix anything, just to face it." She wrote that on the night of the party, she had no idea what was happening. Brooke was too focused on making everything perfect. The menu had to be right, the lighting had to hit just right, all the guests had to be seated. She didn't notice the folding chair. She didn't notice the person who didn't belong at an event that was supposed to be about family. I was so used to trusting Ashley's version of things, so used to deferring to her parents' planning, that I forgot. Sometimes the truth sits quietly in the corners, and you only find it when you stop talking long enough to hear. She went on to say that after the party, her father, Mr. Whitaker, was furious. Not about the money, but about principle. About how a family could treat their own like that. And then lie about it. James told me you refused to pay the rest of the bill. At first I thought it was a misunderstanding, but my father called the restaurant himself. He asked who put down the deposit. They said your name. Then he called me back. And for the first time, I couldn't defend what I was part of. Brooke said she later spoke with the waiter, the one who had brought the bill to the table. He confirmed everything. I had booked the venue. I'd ordered the flowers. I'd even arranged a custom menu for guests with shellfish allergies. You didn't just pay, Lucas. You cared. And what hurts me most is we didn't even notice. We walked into a night you built and ignored the builder. I read every word slowly, no rush. Each sentence felt like a gentle cut, not to wound, but to open something that had long been festering. At the end, she wrote, "We ended the engagement, not just because of that night, but because afterward I saw more. I saw how Ashley talked about you, like you were pitiful, easy to manipulate, someone who would always understand and endure. And I realized I had believed that too. I'm not writing to apologize on their behalf. I just want you to know. I see you, and I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner." I sat there for a long while after finishing the email. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt one thing. For the first time, someone outside my family, someone who owed me absolutely nothing, looked straight at me and saw that I was real. I don't know why I was surprised, but that morning, when I heard the knock at the door around 10 a.m., my heart still skipped a beat. I live alone. No one ever drops by unannounced. When I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing there, long coat, hair neatly pinned, holding a plastic container with something warm inside, I just stood still for a few seconds. She had never come to Seattle alone before. I opened the door, didn't say a word, neither did she. We stood there in that uncomfortable silence until she held up the container. I made lasagna, your favorite. I stepped aside to let her in. She placed the dish on the table, took off her coat, and sat down in the chair across from mine, the same way she used to sit when checking my homework as a kid. I waited for her to speak. Eventually, she took a deep breath. Her thin hands gently twisted the corner of the tablecloth. I know. I stayed silent for too long. I said nothing. I'm not here to explain, not here to ask you to move on. I know one apology won't fix everything, but if I don't say this, I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. I looked at her, not with resentment, but with a strange kind of curiosity, because for the first time she wasn't avoiding it. I let it go too far. I let you carry too much. I thought, because you were quiet, you were okay. She paused, then gave a small, broken smile. That might be the stupidest thing a mother can ever believe. I tightened my hands on the table. You were always in the background, always there. And I thought, because you didn't ask for praise, because you didn't ask to be seen, you didn't need love. Her voice cracked. But who doesn't want to be seen, right? My eyes welled up, but I didn't cry. She placed her hand on the table. Not on mine, just close enough. I can't undo the years, but I can say this, plainly, for the first time, with no dodging. I'm sorry, Lucas. I took a deep breath. It didn't feel like closure, didn't feel like justice, but something heavy inside me loosened, just enough to breathe again. I nodded. I know. She smiled, her eyes softened. I'm flying back to Vermont tonight. I won't drag this out, won't intrude. I just needed you to know I see you now. I walked her to the door. Just before stepping into the hallway, she turned back to look at me one last time. You don't have to forgive anyone. But you deserve peace. I didn't answer, just stood there, watching the door close behind her. And in that moment, I didn't feel small anymore. After that day, nothing changed magically. There were no tearful reunions, no surprise family dinners where someone stood up sobbing, realizing I'd been the unsung hero all along. No miracles. But there were also no more accusations, no more guilt-laced phone calls, no one using my name as a backup plan, just silence. A strange kind of silence, not heavy, not bitter, but spacious, quiet enough for me to finally hear myself again. I went back to work, but not in the same rhythm. I began rearranging my life, literally, cleaning out my apartment, letting go of things tied to sacrifices no one ever acknowledged. I sold the leather chair my dad had once said he'd borrow for a few months. That had taken up space in my living room for 4 years. I canceled auto payments I'd been covering, stopped checking the family group chat every morning out of habit. I booked a flight to Spain, a trip I'd canceled 2 years ago when Dad needed a ride to surgery and Ashley couldn't drive long distances. I stood before Gaudi's creations, wandered the narrow alleys of Barcelona, drank morning coffee alone at a quiet cafe. And for the first time, I didn't feel left behind. I wasn't standing behind anyone. I wasn't setting the stage for someone else's spotlight. I was Lucas, living my life, not asking permission, not waiting for approval. Once, I read a quote. No one sidelines you from their life unless you first sideline yourself from your own. I used to read that as an accusation. Now, I see it as an awakening. Forgiveness doesn't always need an apology. And healing doesn't come from someone finally seeing your worth. It comes when you do. I'm no longer angry at Ashley. I don't need a thank you from my parents. I'm not waiting for a birthday text in the family chat. Because I've learned something it took me 36 years to truly grasp. Family isn't an obligation. Presence isn't a default. And everyone has the right to leave a table where they're only invited to pay, not to be loved. I once sat next to the trash bin at a party I paid for. Now I sit at my own table. Small, quiet, filled with sunlight, a place peaceful enough to hear my own heart, and warm enough to know this. I'm no longer a shadow. I am me, And I am here, on my own terms,